Greetings, people! It is I, Simon Sire. I made a visual novel, then a 2D clicker game. Now it is time for the ultimate challenge, creating a 3D game. Except I have no idea what I'm doing. I decided to start by setting up a level editor. You see, to make the map, I didn't want to use Blender, and Godot doesn't really have a level editor. That's when I stumbled across a video about using TrenchBroom with Godot. TrenchBroom is essentially an editor for Quake maps, but it also supports Gold Source. Since I already knew how to use the Hammer editor, I decided to give it a try. I downloaded TrenchBroom and started setting it up. To import the maps into Godot, I needed a plugin called Qodot. Except it wasn't in the official plugin list, and I had no idea where to get it. After hours of trying to get this to work, I found a Reddit post which solved all of my problems. From the correct version of TrenchBroom to the Qodot download page on GitHub. Thank you, random stranger. It was time to finally start working on the game itself. I followed a tutorial on how to make a juiced up third-person controller with jumping, sprinting, camera bob, and all that good stuff. Of course, I ran into many problems. The camera rotated in a hell of a messed up way. The controller wasn't moving in the direction I was looking at. The controller itself wasn't rotating at all. After a full day of troubleshooting and starting over entirely, I finally got it somewhat working. I also made a quick dev textured map in TrenchBroom to test out the movement, which helped me get more accustomed to the editor. But my character controller still felt off. It just didn't feel as good as in the video. So I spent a really long time tweaking the settings to make it feel just right, up to a point where I was happy with it. Then I started working on the map. For now, just dev textures and a couple of boxes for houses. And then I ran into a new problem. The character controller couldn't go up the sidewalk. I found a tutorial on how to let the player walk upstairs using a separation ray, but it didn't really work. Or more accurately, it only worked at one very specific angle. The player beam I mentioned earlier, still not rotating. So instead, I started adding sloped collision shapes so the player could walk up the sidewalk, essentially brute forcing a solution because I can't wrap my head around the movement code. But it was a real pain in the ass, so I gave up on that. I figured I should add some textures. So I went outside, if you can believe that, and took pictures of grass and concrete. Of course, I didn't touch any of that filthy grass. I brought the images into Photoshop, made the textures tileable, and put them in the game. And it kind of looked like dog shit. So I just grabbed some textures from Google, pixelated them, and tiled them instead. So good looking! Then I added a bunch of visual effects and retro-styled shaders, and also changed the resolution. I threw in a small crosshair too. Next, I decided to add dynamic footsteps. I downloaded some free sound effects for walking on concrete and grass, and made them sound crunchy using an 8-bit plugin in Audacity. Here's how the footstep system works. It plays a randomly pitched sound every time the camera bob moves, which means that the player is walking. To decide which sound to play, I use a floor raycast under the player. It detects the surface type and picks a matching footstep sound. But making this footstep system work with maps from TrenchBroom was a huge pain, so I just didn't do it. Since the map is basically just grass and concrete, and grass is usually lower than concrete, I just added a huge block with a custom group for playing grass sounds. And if you're walking on anything else, it plays concrete sounds. So what have we learned? Don't work smarter, don't work harder either. Just do whatever's easiest and hope it doesn't bite you in the ass later. Speaking of sound effects, I recorded some exhausted breathing sounds. Just a placeholder for now, but of course, that meant I had to implement stamina too. So I did that, and it wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. Now you get tired after running, and after a few seconds, your stamina slowly regenerates back. Now it's probably a good time to tell you what kind of game I'm actually making. For months, I've had this idea where you play as a struggling mailman delivering letters around the neighborhood. Taxes have skyrocketed, leaving you with a massive daily workload. If you fail to deliver everything on time, the government starts taking random possessions from your home, until eventually, you're left with nothing and lose. You might be thinking,
what the hell? This sounds boring as hell. This is just a government job simulator, and I'm supposed to be afraid of taxes? Where's the combat? The explosions? Everything that makes a game fun!
Shh. That's a problem for another time. Anyway, I made my first model, a mailbox. I horribly textured it, created some opening and closing animations, and imported it to Godot. Now we have a mailbox and animations for it, but no interactivity yet. So I followed Nagy's How to Add Interaction in Godot 4 tutorial and got some simple interactivity working. You can now trigger the animation by interacting with the mailbox. I also modeled some mail that appears inside the mailbox when you interact with it further. This purple looking house is fine and all, but it could be better. The thing is, I've always struggled with modeling houses in Blender. But I guess it's time to learn. I modeled the player's house, looked like crap, so I redid it. Slightly better, but still not what I wanted. I also modeled a fence to block off areas where there aren't any houses. That's kind of like a world boundary. And that's when I really got into modeling all sorts of things for the game. More fences, gates, bushes, houses. Many houses. I created around 3 different textures for each house, so they wouldn't look too repetitive. I added animations and sounds to the gates. Look at that! Then I realized, mailboxes usually go in front of gates. So all that gate opening effort was totally pointless. I also reduced the movement speed of the player whenever they walked into a bush. I started putting all these assets together to create the main map for the game, which took me about a week. I added many things, for example, a supermarket currently called Carol's Kaufhaus. I hope I can come up with a better fictional name later, and maybe even add an interior if needed for gameplay. I modeled some street signs and added them around the map. I also added a bus stop. Look at that! Could put some cool advertisements here. I modeled numbers 0 to 9 so I could add house addresses. And boy, it was such a tedious process. But now every house has a different number according to its address. And here's the map. It's basically done. Just need some more polish on the outer areas you can reach, and more street details like litter and trash bins. Naturally, using TrenchBroom as my level editor came with its own problems. Every single time I compiled a map to update inside of Godot, it made all my textures blurry and my transparent textures, well, not so transparent. After every update to the map, I had to manually change the filtering mode of every texture and turn my not so transparent anymore textures into transparent ones. Then I added some very basic gameplay. I wrote a script which looks through the map and writes down every single mailbox into an array. It then randomly chooses one address to deliver to, which shows up in the top left corner. There is also a timer on the right, which shows how much time you have left. So you'd better hurry and deliver that mail before the taxis catch up. After delivering all the mail or running out of time, you go back to your home, which I haven't made yet.
Oh, brother!
And the loop continues. In terms of gameplay, that's all I've done so far. I also thought about adding the mail you're delivering to the player's hand. Well, not an actual hand, just an invisible point where the hand would be. That wasn't too hard, but I also wanted it to bob while walking. Instead of doing it with code though, I just made a simple animation for it. It's not perfect, but it'll do. That's all for this devlog. I'd love to hear what cool ideas you'd like to see added to the game, so I dropped them in the... leave some comments in the comments section. And if you want to see updates on progress on the game, then join the Big Battery official Discord server, link to the description.